or we were 40 minutes into the show.
Right here. Depends on the car. The four cylinders are pretty easy to work on. Truth. Audi V8s are terrible. They put the timing chains at the back, so to change the timing chain tensioners, you have to remove the whole motor, and it's a V8, so, fun. Or V6.
Yeah, that also sounds really impractical.
Incredibly impractical. That's one of the few things that I will say that is just retarded. But, whatever. Took me about 5 minutes to remove all the trim to replace the gauge cluster in the Jeep. Good old American cars. America!
All right, you ready to do this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Every time you draw, I have to pause for you to finish, right? It's the only noisy thing your e-sync does is your draw.
Wah.
Yes, I apologize for my pseudo-professionalism. Tech Twice Weekly, episode number 14. Hey everybody, this is Tech Twice Weekly for September 18th, 2014. I'm Ben White, and this is your source for technology news and discussion twice a week, every Monday and Thursday. This week, today I'm happy to have my guest on the show, my perpetually reoccurring guest, Eric Fee. How you doing tonight, man?
Super groovy.
Awesome. The week hasn't completely beat you down yet?
Oh no, it has. My will has been broken. I now submit.
Well, the weekend's right around the corner. One more day, right?
Oh yes. Just one more day.
All right. Well, as we long for the weekend and for Friday to be out of the way, we'll start with our headlines. Gizmodo is covering early reports of problems with Apple's new iOS HealthKit API. The HealthKit API is intended to let developers create health-related applications to put into the iTunes App Store. However, right before the iOS launch, Apple had to remove several HealthKit-related apps from the iTunes Store. While it appears the apps were removed without prior notice being given to the developers, Apple has since followed up with them, letting them know that the problem is with HealthKit and not their applications. But currently, no further details have been given. Apple did provide an update to Gizmodo earlier this morning, clarifying that the HealthKit bug involves a problem with health apps not properly pushing to iOS 8. Other than that, though, and noting that it is something they're working on, Apple simply hopes to have the issue resolved by the end of the month. No more specific details have been given. Tweaktown is reporting on the disappointing news that while Apple has added NFC to the newest iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus phones, the NFC chip will be locked to function only with the Apple Pay service. This means that while the newest iPhones will have an NFC chip capable of handling traditional NFC tasks, there will be no way for developers to interact with it. This makes me wonder, though, just how long until someone discovers a way to jailbreak the NFC chip, freeing it to handle many other NFC-based activities. Are you a big NFC fan, Eric? I know in the Nexus 5 we both have NFC, but I don't find myself using it a lot.
Yeah, I got a bunch of tags, and they sit around the house. Some of them are used daily, some of them aren't. I was actually really excited because I had read about NFC and how people were using it in interesting and creative ways well before I bought the Nexus 5. So when I bought it, I pretty much immediately went out and bought some tags for it. And then I actually paid for some really neat software on the Play Store to interact with them. And it kind of pains me a little bit to see that developers are being held up from accessing the NFC capabilities of the new phone.
There are some rumors going around that perhaps NFC in the iPhone itself might be locked, while maybe the NFC chip that is supposedly going to be in the Apple Watch could be unlocked. That seems a little suspicious to me that one would be unlocked and not the other. But no, I have to agree with you. I think limiting the functionality of technology built into your device is ridiculous. There's no good reason to artificially restrict the capability of the hardware. But who knows? It wouldn't be the first time Apple has eventually unlocked a feature in their devices, both due to just public outcry as well as once they decide that their software works right with it, then they open up the functionality to other developers. Gizmodo has news on Google's announcement of new services coming to the Chromecast. While not a huge collection, Amazon's Twitch streaming service has joined the party, along with iHeartRadio, as well as several Disney streaming services. Hopefully, with the recent release of Amazon's Prime Instant Video application on Android, we'll soon see the service come to Chromecast as well. However, currently there's no word on the service having any Chromecast release date. The Verge is reporting on Apple's dirty little secret, the iPhone 6 camera bulge. While during the iPhone 6 announcement, Apple made it clear that the iPhone 6 was slimmer compared to the iPhone 5, coming in at a mere 6.9 millimeters thin. However, at no point during the announcement did Apple talk about the iPhone's camera bump. While Nexus 5 users are used to this slightly awkward lump on the back of their smartphone, Apple has historically always managed to maintain a flush back to the iPhone. And even more interesting part of this story is that Apple has actually removed the visible camera bump from many images of the iPhone 6 on the Apple website. This leads me to wonder why. They designed the phone, they put it together. What are they hiding in their product images? Since once this device gets into people's hands, they're going to be aware there's a bump back there. Oh well, maybe Apple will update those images sometime. The Verge is also covering the auction of many new top-level domains. Amazon picked up the top-level domain name .buy for a cool $4.6 million, beating out Google's bid to pick up the TLD. This comes after Amazon previously lost their request to own the top-level domain .amazon. The TLD .tech was sold to .tech LLC for $6.7 million, also beating another Google bid. However, don't worry about poor old Google. They still have an interest in over 100 other top-level domain names, which will later go up for auction as well. What do you think of these new generic TLDs that are coming out all over the place, Eric? Is this something you think you're going to register a website under sometime, or do you think it's all just a big mess?
I don't like the idea that people can just buy their own top-level domains. It feels like it kind of muddies up domain names as we know them, and it kind of makes the old generic .com, .net, .org that we love seem kind of meaningless, especially since the pool of names is slimmer by the day. But at the same time, I think that denying domains like .amazon is a good practice because brand-specific TLDs seem like even worse than something generic like .buy or .tech.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, in a way, I can understand their benefit, but at the same time, I think for a lot of non-technical users, all of these extra TLDs are really just going to confuse a lot of the general public. And some of them already have a hard enough time understanding the difference between AOL keywords and actual domain names. I know my mom, bless her heart, still puts search terms right into the browser search bar for the address. Thankfully, Google has now turned that into a search box, but for the longest time, that was a problem trying to teach the difference between search and address bar. Oh well, we'll see how this goes. I think there's a long road ahead of us of crazy TLDs that are yet to come. Extreme Tech brings us news on Microsoft's invitation to a press event they will be holding on September 30th in San Francisco. The invite simply states, "Join us to hear about what's next for Windows and the enterprise." So naturally, everyone's expecting the event to be about Windows 9, codenamed Threshold, and expecting that it may be unveiled. It is also expected that the attendees will be given copies of the Windows 9 technical preview. This should mean that it will be offered online shortly after the event as well. Please check back with us on October 2nd, and we'll be covering all the news that comes out of this event. Are you looking forward to Windows 9, Eric, or are you skipping straight from 7 to Windows 9 if it looks worth it?
Most likely, from the data that I've been reading about Windows 9, they're bringing back a lot of popular desktop features, like the Start menu. Cool thing is, from what I've read, which may not be what is actually comes out of Windows 9, the Start menu will have Start menu items like somewhat what we're used to, but will also have tiles that can be rearranged, changed, and organized like the Metro interface. So you'll have a small tile interface that you have control over in your Start menu as well. I also read that they're bringing back virtual desktops. Virtual desktops have been available in Windows since I think like Windows 2000, if I remember correctly. But there's no interface to control the virtual desktops. You have to have a third-party program to control what desktop you're viewing. But with Windows 9, from what I've read, they're adding a tool for that that's built into the Start menu, so you can access different desktops, which is really neat.
And that's a feature that a lot of Linux users have been familiar with for a long time as well, right?
Oh yes, most definitely. The idea of virtual desktops has been around in Linux uh, window managers for a very long time. I used to use Blackbox, and then when I started using Windows as a desktop again, I used a program called Blackbox for Windows, which was a replacement shell, which had support for the Windows virtual desktops, so I could actually still use the virtual desktops like I used to.
Is that something you still find yourself using, or at least longing for if you're not using it?
No, not really. With the introduction of the Windows 7 desktop and the changes to the Start menu and the ease of tiling your windows, I find that the stock Windows 7 interface works for me on a daily basis, and it's good for getting work done.
I think for a lot of Windows users too, especially very recently with the drops in LCD prices, a lot of people are adding multiple screens to their computer, giving them pseudo virtual desktops all at once without having to switch between multiple desktops and only seeing one at a time. So I can see the benefit here, but I'm not sure if all users will see it.
That's true, but I think that if they do the interface portion of controlling the desktops correctly, I think it could be very valuable. And not only that, but it can be extremely valuable with people with limited screen real estate, like laptop users and so forth.
That's a good point. Yeah, people on a laptop or even the Surface tablet could really benefit from this drastically. Well, we'll have to check back and see how the press event goes. I'd love to get my hands on the tech demo, so I'm hoping they do release it online publicly. And if that's the case, maybe I'll get some time and when it comes out to actually get some hands-on time to actually give you a real review of it and see how things go. Fire up a VM and check it out. All right. Well, Ars Technica has a story on Google's Android Silver program, which we haven't heard much about lately, and that appears to be because the program has been scrapped. According to rumors, the Android Silver collection of devices were planned as high-end stock Android OS phones that would be sold through cell phone carriers. However, following Google's chief business officer, Nikesh Arora, leaving last July, momentum and interest in the project has dried up within the company. So, at least for now, it sounds like Android Silver will remain just an idea that never came together. Engadget covers news from the FTC on new rules being put into place that require retailers to ship packages within a reasonable time frame, or at least within 30 days of the purchase if they cannot provide a specific ship-by date. These rules are a direct result of the overwhelming number of shipping delays that occurred during last year's holiday season in the US. If retailers are not able to meet these shipping requirements, they will have to either get the buyer's permission to delay the delivery or provide an immediate refund. These rules go live December 8th, so keep an eye out for the arrive by Christmas cutoff date for many retailers to be much earlier this year so they make sure to meet these requirements. Our last story for today, GigaOM has news on the Chromium OS team working on adding inductive charging to Google Chromebooks. Right now, the team has only added code to the Chromium OS project indicating how and when it would work. According to the code, the opened or closed state of the Chromebook lid is monitored, and wireless charging would only be functional while the lid is closed. So for right now, it appears that this won't be designed to allow you to power the Chromebook wirelessly while working on it, but it could mean that when you're done with the Chromebook, you could simply place it on a charging pad and forget about it, letting you pick up your fully charged Chromebook later as you head out the door. I know you've been spending a lot of time looking into Chromebooks lately. Eric, what do you think about the idea of being able to wirelessly charge a Chromebook?
Well, not only have I looked at Chromebooks recently, but also I'm a big fan of wireless charging. And from reading from reading the article, I'm guessing that the wireless charging is meant to only be used when the effective laptop is off, because wireless charging does develop heat, and there's a heat transfer. And with laptops, especially those that use passive cooling, like really thin laptops or low-powered laptops like Chromebooks that use passive cooling or only have a single fan for a whole machine, have a lot of electronics sandwiched in there, adding the extra heat could be a problem for some devices. But it may change on a per-device basis or something, who knows. But I think the idea of wirelessly charging a laptop like that is great, because I have two laptops right now. One of them is a dead battery, so it's more like a desktop now. And the other one is my MacBook, and I always got to plug them in. You know, whenever I come home, I got to plug it in, or I got to plug it in when I'm out. And it'd be nice if I could just come home, drop it on a slab so it can charge, and then just leave it there and just grab it on my way back out the door. I think that's great. And not only that, but it also will lead to less problems with charging ports. Not all laptops, but a great many, and those who have owned laptops for many years will know that not all charging cables and ports are created equal. Plugging and unplugging and using a device while it's plugged in can easily break many charging ports or charging cords. And some laptops have their cords or plugs in a very awkward position. So if you like are bending on them or leaning on them, or they're holding them up, or they're on your lap and they're leaning back, you can put stress on that cord. So the less times you got to plug it in, the less chances you're going to have a break in it.
That's definitely true. I mean, you just take one look at eBay, and the number of laptops that are for sale there with the only problem wrong with them is the charging port no longer works. And I know for a lot of people it's a real easy fix. You just go in there with a soldering iron and fix the solder where it's broken on the motherboard, but it's caused by that exact stress you just talked about, the cable having tension put on it. And eliminating that problem seems like a positive thing. I don't see any reason why this this could be a problem. I think this is nothing but a benefit. And I don't know if something like this, I'm not familiar enough with the amount of power that can be provided through a wireless charger. If you could move wireless charging it to something like a Dell or a MacBook or a traditional higher power system than a Chromebook, I'm guessing you probably could. It would just take much longer to charge the larger batteries those type of mobile devices typically have. Um, but do you know what sort of capacity is the wrong word, but how much of a charge you can get out of these wireless charging pads currently?
Well, the pads are all based on size. The induction rate is fairly slow, but with a larger pad, you can have, I, I think, anyways, I think you can just have a larger coil, so you can just pass more juice. A lot of, like I said, it does generate heat, so some of the electricity from the induction charger gets wasted as heat. So there is that. Oh, and I actually recently fixed, you know, Richard,
Hmm.
our good friend from high school. It's been so long. Um, his dad actually broke his laptop's charging cord, and so I popped it open to fix it.
Oh, nice. So you had to do one of those repairs.
Yep, it was tedious, and the problem is the port was fine, but the cord was broken.
Oh, interesting. So it was actually on the charger side rather than the laptop side once you got into it.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because it's more difficult to fix. You have
Well,
to pull apart the barrel connector and then move up the wire to where it's not broken.
right, right. But at least in that capacity, if you wanted to take the easy way out, you could just replace the entire charging cable and brick.
True, although that can be very expensive as well.
Definitely, yeah. But oftentimes, for most people, it's more convenient to do that than deal with having to tear open the computer and solder it or something like that on a pure convenience factor.
That is true, but a lot of OEM chargers can cost between $100 to $200, and they put on strange connectors on there that are difficult to replicate with the generic, quote unquote, the generic or like multi-adapter units. So it's its own type of challenge.
Definitely, yeah. I'm hoping wireless charging becomes more ubiquitous. I think it has a lot of potential, and it's really being underused right now.
Yeah, a coworker actually was curious if his phone supported wireless charging, so he came over to my desk at work and plopped down on my charger and he got nothing, unfortunately.
I think that's what most people would experience.
The one thing I will say, if you are thinking about buying a wireless charger for your phone and you're looking online, you have to remember that wireless chargers are very simple devices, and the $40 chargers are way too expensive. I have three of them, and they all cost $10 shipped. Two of them one of them I ordered on Amazon, the other two I ordered on eBay, and of course the eBay shipped ones came from China, and they did take longer to get here, but they were $10 shipped. So if you're going to buy a wireless charger, do some research, do some Google, and find one that's a good price point and that has good contact.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, with that, we will wrap up our headlines and move on to tech toys you wish you could buy. And the first product we got here, you actually can buy, just not in the U.S. yet. It is Lego Serious Play. These aren't your kids' Legos, or they kind of are actually. It is a new series from Lego that is aimed to market to adults. The Lego toys they're offering it's from the Serious Play line, and they come in kits just like traditional Lego packs. And the difference is there's, at least from what I'm understanding, there's no real predefined design. Like a lot of kits, you might get the Millennium Falcon kit or the submarine kit or the fighter plane kit, and they're meant to build that specific Lego thing. And of course, you can build your own if you're creative, but the way the Serious Play kit is designed, instead of having just one big design to build, it's set up for team building exercises, and there's workplace sets available. The intent being that playing with Legos at your desk or at a team meeting or something like that helps break the ice. It makes people more conversational. It gets people talking, working together, helping each other. Um, and I I kind of like the idea personally. I love the idea of instead of some of these stupid icebreakers that a lot of corporate culture has, name your favorite pizza toppings, or try and guess somebody's high school. I don't know. There are all sorts of silly icebreakers out there, but I think build something with someone using Legos is a great icebreaker. I'm really hoping to see these come to the U.S. for sale. Right now, they're priced online. Like I said, they're not available in the U.S. market yet, from what I've seen, but the kits vary in price depending on how big of a kit you're buying, starting at 23.99 British pounds sterling, which amounts to about $40 US. And the top end kit comes in at about 510 pounds sterling, and that comes into a whopping $840 US. So pretty spendy for the top kit, but these are also being marketed for companies to buy. They're not really being marketed to individuals exactly. I mean, it might be for an individual manager to buy for their team, but they're meant to be corporate purchases, rather than just fun toys off the shelf. What do you think about this new Lego line, Eric? Have you been a big Lego guy, or were you never get into them?
When I was a kid, you couldn't get the Legos out of my hands, and my parents were always walking around, stepping on them, and then exclaiming. Um, and I actually still have some lying around somewhere. I like Legos, and I always have. I think that this is kind of a far-fetched sale, though. Um, I don't know who's going to want to buy them when you can just go on eBay and buy a mixed assorted bag of Legos for significantly cheaper.
It's definitely true. Especially in the day and age of 3D printing, the price of Legos is going to soon fall through the floor once printing becomes a little more affordable, which I foresee happening in the next couple of years. But I don't know. I think marketing these at a corporate atmosphere could work. I could see them, as long as the marketing is done properly, targeting companies buying this sort of set rather than individuals. I think it's a market they've yet to be able to tap into.
Maybe. And I will say that Legos are engineered on a very, very precise set of tooling, and the margins for Legos is extremely small. I don't think that 3D printing may necessarily outpace Legos, at least for children. And I will say that one of the reasons why Lego is so popular and has been around so long is because, unlike their competitors, Lego bricks will always fit together. Lego bricks will always go hand in hand, and they don't break very easily. They don't wear out badly as they get old. Most Lego pieces will fit together for a very long time, and they'll do so snugly, so you can keep building. Um, Whereas a lot of competitors, the blocks that they create do not fit together very well. They do not last. You can't just clean them and resell them on eBay like a lot of people do with Legos. Um, I don't know about trying to tap into corporate market, because I think that most adults are kind of past the age in which Legos are the kind of thing they want to spend time on, and I don't think that employers want to pay people money to play with Legos.
I'd agree with you to a point. I mean, I think a lot of the big corporate culture, the ones that are already going to spend a ton of money on corporate retreats and team building exercises, or maybe rent an entire bowling alley for a night for their company to have a team building meeting, or take everyone out and hire some guy to teach them how to trust each other better. Those sort of corporate environments, I could see splurging on something like this. Or the other side of that coin would be the tech startups. I could totally see walking into a tech startup in San Francisco and seeing piles of Legos everywhere. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Oh, right. I guess you didn't really have anything to add to that sentiment, huh?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to say anything.
No, no sweat. But moving on, kind of, sort of related, I guess, not intentionally, but a new 3D printer is coming out, being developed. What makes this 3D printer different is that its concept to do a better print job is moving the print head, and that's pretty traditional. But this design mounts the print head on a omnidirectional robot. This gives the printhead truly free movement over the space you're printing on, meaning the bed of the printer could technically be virtually limitless. Um, I suppose based on, really, your constraint is going to be the power, the battery life of the robot, which I think can technically be charged by direct cable as well, and the amount of material that the device can handle in one time, how much ink is in the cartridge, so to speak. But while all of the examples shown for this robot, the 3D bot, as they're calling it, simply show it printing a square, a layered square, but it shows off the concept that this device can really truly move anywhere it needs to hit any point on the 3D printing requirement. Um, I know we've talked a little bit about 3D printers over the course of this show so far. What do you think of this design concept for the 3D printer?
It's not new. People have been talking about 3D printers in industrial scale for concrete houses for a long time, which is effectively the same thing, only on a much larger scale. So you'll have like an industrial, basically a robot that you place onto your build site, and it will construct a 3D printed concrete dwelling or shelter. And of course, it can't do roofs because it can't print over nothing. And I don't know what this video is supposed to be about, because the robot just has a plunger, like a syringe that it squirts out some kind of liquid filament, and I don't understand how it's supposed to work, because it needs to be heated so it can cool and then take a permanent shape. So I don't know. I think it's clickbait, actually.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't dismiss it that handily. I mean, looking at the concept here, it's a 3D printer that can print anything anywhere. And looking at the design for it, the print head they have currently installed is just a plunger pushing out goop. But I'd imagine you could replace that with any print head needed. I don't see any good reason here why you couldn't replace it with a traditional print head fed off a reel with a heating element. That practically should work just fine.
Well, in theory, you might be true, but in practice, you'd have a trouble having a battery that's big enough to print something that's more than bigger than your palm, because the heating element takes energy, and that's much more energy than you're going to find in a removable battery for it, especially with the scale it's at. And not only that, but you have to understand that there's going to be limitations on what you can print, because the robot can't walk over things that's already printed. Whereas with a traditional 3D printer like a MakerBot or something, the print head can move up and can move over things that's already printed. But this robot can't. It can only print on the very outside. So you can't print anything with internal structure unless the internal structure is shorter than the distance between the print head and the wheels.
Well, and yeah, that's actually a very valid point. I mean, it looks like this device does support moving on the Z-axis. It can adjust the height of what it's printing to, but it looks like with the current way this specific 3D printer is designed, there's no X or Y axis control other than moving the robot itself. So you're right, you're limited to the length of the arm ultimately, because it can get close to what it's printing, but once it runs into it, you're going to have problems.
Right. And I'm not saying that problem is not something that could be solved, but I'm not sure that it needs to be solved. 3D printing is still in a lot of ways fledgling, and there are a lot of technological hurdles that 3D printing still has to get over. But in a lot of ways, certain methods of 3D printing has been very successful, and I think that the standard MakerBot type printer is really fleshed out and good at what it does. And the idea of just making them larger and scaling up the size of items that can be printed is a little bit more important. This robot is a really neat idea, but I think it lacks many finer capabilities that can be had for a traditional MakerBot that can be built for very cheap.
So basically, you're saying it's a neat concept and maybe a cool toy, but it's simply not practical for any sort of professional application.
Yeah, I'm kind of saying it's kind of clickbait.
I don't know. I hesitate to call it clickbait because to me, when you label something clickbait, I think of BuzzFeed. These girls lost 50 pounds. You'll never believe reason number 6. And a 3D printer that could print anything, anywhere, I can see your point. I can see that as clickbait. But at the same time, it is technically true.
As long as it only prints the outside.
Print the inside. It just has to print the inside before the outside.
True.
Because it could print the inside and then make a 360-degree round to get the outside printed. I mean, it wouldn't be efficient, but it could be done.
Maybe, but also, with a heater and heated filament, you have to put the filament together while it's hot.
Right.
Otherwise, it won't stick. Otherwise, it won't form. It'll be different. It'll be different pieces that are kind of stuck together as opposed to one long piece of filament that's been traced around a complex object. So,
well, and to be fair to this project, they aren't trying to market this as is. This is more a proof of concept than anything else, and they admit that fully in the article. That
if so, they have more concept to prove to me.
The concept is that it works. I mean, it's not like you can go buy this off the shelf.
Well, it works in the little square they printed, and by works I mean they printed something with a liquid that still might need to be cured and then sanded like everything else.
Right, exactly. It's not ready for prime time for a company to drop $50,000 and put this into production, but it's at a point where they could take the concept of it and work on scale. And now that it works functionally, they can work on hammering out bugs and problems with it in functionality.
Maybe we'll see, I guess.
And, it could always just end up being a cool toy. There's always that. I think there's a lot of 3D printers on the market that are going to end up falling into the cool toy category and never make it much past that point of their lifespan.
Possibly.
A lot of them are on Kickstarter. There's only so many ways to reinvent the wheel, and I'm starting to see a lot of repeat concepts with different colorful cases, which to me does not make a new product. All right. Well, let's see. We're running a little bit long here. We had a little more discussion on some of our earlier topics than I expected. So, looking at our last two discussion topics, do either one of those catch your interest more than the other?
No. Sorry.
All right. Well, in that case, maybe we should just wrap it up then. I mean, I'll put the links in the show notes. Like I said, we're running a little bit long, so I don't have a problem with cutting those out of our show today. But if you're interested, I've got a link to a story about the Pirate Bay founder being forced to wear handcuffs at his father's funeral as a pallbearer, even though he is set to be freed in the next, I believe it's 20 days. He'll have fulfilled his full service or sentence that he was charged with. The government is still requiring him to wear handcuffs at the funeral and while carrying his father's coffin. So that's kind of a interesting story on just law and whether it's necessarily needs to be that strict. And the second story is about a warrant canary that Apple previously had included in its documentation, notifying readers that Apple had never received an order under Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act. We would expect to challenge such an order if it is served on us. That act is basically the silent court where Apple is required to provide user information without notifying users that they are being required to provide that information. And that legal statement has been removed from their transparency report. If you're not familiar with the concept of a warrant canary, it's basically a kind of an alert that companies or individuals hide in a document, and when it's removed, it's a signal that something has changed. In this case, the implication is that Apple has, since putting that in there, has since received an order under Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, and user data has been provided to the U.S. government without the user's consent or knowledge. So it's an interesting political piece to read, think about, and be aware of how the U.S. government is functioning and operating. I think it's a time when we all need to be a little more aware of our privacy. But with that said, we'll go ahead and close out the show for tonight. Anything you have to share with anybody going into the weekend?
I would like to share to the users the same thing I shared with you a little bit earlier. I'll be working on my Jeep this weekend. I received in the mail an order from Amazon which contains some remote entry kit and 3 universal lock actuators, so I will be adding remote lock and unlock to my Jeep. which is exciting, especially because the worst thing about the Jeep is that there's no trunk release for the driver. So to open the trunk, I must get out with a key and unlock it and open it, or just open it. But either way, it's a really sad day. And I also purchased some used cruise control parts from a local store, local salvage yard. So I'll be adding cruise control to my Jeep as well.
Very nice. That's going to make things a lot nicer for you, I imagine.
Yes, I don't drive on the highway too much, but I'm often there on the weekends, and I'd like to have cruise control for maintaining that sweet, sweet gas mileage.
Yeah, especially if you're to go on any sort of long distance drive, cruise control just makes it much nicer. And I mean, even without it, what sort of fuel mileage are you getting with your Jeep? Is it reasonable?
The first tank that I measured, I got 19 miles to the gallon, which is pretty good for a 4.0 Jeep. And I'm hoping to be able to get that out to 20 with some conservative driving.
Not,
Yeah.
that's not bad at all. I mean, I know even with my Honda Civic, a little much smaller car, it's only a four-cylinder engine, I believe. I'm only getting 24, 25, and doing a 40-mile round-trip commute each day to work, definitely noticeable.
Yeah, I drive to work and back every day, but my commute's rather short. The only downside is just that about 80% of my driving is in the city. So I may be on the highway during the day for little jaunts, but not for any stretch of time. So that kind of fuel economy is pretty good for what I usually commute in. And I didn't get way better gas mileage in my Volkswagen before it was totaled.
Tear, poor little out.
Yep, from my dead homies.
All right. Well, I'd share what I'm doing this weekend, but I actually don't know. The weekend's up in the air. The schedule's empty. I got to figure it out. There's some chores around the house need to be taken care of. Clean up the office a little bit. It's kind of a mess in here, but probably just kind of a relax and take care of business around the house sort of weekend. So not all that exciting. All right. So with that boring weekend announcement out of the way, I'll go ahead and wrap us up here. Please check out the website, techtwiceweekly.com. You can subscribe to the RSS feed there. Find us in iTunes. Find us on Stitcher. Find us on a number of other podcast, what are they, I guess, networks. And we also are on YouTube, Tech Twice Weekly on YouTube, at Tech Twice Weekly on Twitter, Tech Twice Weekly on Facebook. We're not hard to find. Just pick a social media network you like us on, and you'll get all the information, all the updates, and a notification every time there's a new show. So thank you for tuning in. I'm Ben White. That's Eric Fee, and I will catch you Monday. And apparently we're not getting outro music, so there it goes. Have a good night, everybody.